This is TWiT.
Of course, apps became the thing, and you were front and center. In fact, every smartphone I've ever bought, one of the first things I install is Evernote. And now then all my stuff's there, which is nice.
They're going away, I think, apps. I think we're
really?
Yeah. I think I think the whole cycle of apps, it's going to be, a decade. It's going to be like the decade of apps, and then that's it.
That happens in the industry. I mean, remember the decade of CD-ROMs?
Yeah, totally. I think it's going to be, roughly 2008, to about 2017, 2018, and then it's really going to fade away.
Is that why you've put all this effort into this HTML5 new web interface? This is the beta, by the way, if you're an Evernote user.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean native apps versus HTML stuff. I actually think native apps for a long time are still gonna win. I really mean like the idea that there are apps that you like interact with and choose to launch in a device and spend time with, like apps as kind of an atomic unit of computing. I think it's gonna fade away, which is a big deal. It's going to be very challenging for app companies to stay relevant when there are no more apps.
What is this because of iOS extensions? What is this going to look like?
Well, I think if you look at kind of every big jump in computing, like from PCs to mobile, and then from mobile to wearables, like some concepts always become much less relevant. Concepts that used to be super relevant become much less relevant. So like when you went from PC software, like when we were designing PC software, your average session length on a PC is like 2 hours.
Right.
So, if you're designing, a word processor for a PC, your goal is like, how do you make someone productive 2 hours at a time, like once a day?
Right.
And so you can deal with a lot of stuff like files and folders and like you just have the time. You've got 2 hours, you've got time to deal with this stuff. When you go on a mobile phone, your average session length drops to like 2 minutes. But instead of once a day, it's like 50 times a day. So, how do you make someone productive 2 minutes at a time? Or if you're making a video game, how do you make someone entertained 2 minutes at a time? And one of the first things to go are these old ideas of files. Like files are much less relevant on phones than they were on desktops, just because if you've only got 2 minutes, like you're not going to really want to browse through directories and think about that as a concept. But apps became really important because, you've got 2 minute session that's just enough time to like swipe a couple of times and app an app. But when you go to wearables, the average session length is going to go down to seconds. It's going to be like a second and a half, like 1,000 times a day.
You're right.
So
I'm wearing an Android, the Moto X Android Wear Watch, Moto 360.
Yeah.
In fact, it's starting to talk to me. Stop. Shh. Quiet. And you do. That's exactly what, in fact, even as I've been talking to you, my daughter called. I swiped her away.
Yep.
My Evernote, I was logging into Evernote, so my code came in on my watch, swiped away. You're right. Literally a couple of seconds.
Yeah, and so you're not going to have apps on it. You're not going to be like, swipe.
No, that's terrible.
That's all silly.
Yeah.
So there's going to be like, you're certainly not going to have files, but I don't even think you're going to have apps. So the whole concept changes dramatically when you have wearables, and it's one of the things that we really tried to do over the past year, and we talked about at the conference is, like the industry is stuck using some very archaic metaphors, and the central problem we have is like the metaphors are old and broken. Like a file is a bad idea. A file is sort of a dumb metaphor. An inbox is a dumb metaphor. The future is something else. And we know a little bit of what it's going to be like, but we know definitely what it's not going to be. And what it's not going to be is apps, files, folders, inboxes, slides.
Sounds like it's more atomic than that.
Maybe more interconnected. We're trying a lot of different things. The whole idea, I think, is you don't really have individual tools for specific things. Like there won't really be a communications tool. Like you don't really need a phone. You don't need a tool to collaborate. You don't need a tool to communicate. You should communicate and collaborate as part of creating whatever it is that you're doing, and so on. So I think actually the boundaries between these things get knocked down, and apps are typically very sandbox. There's a lot of sharp boundaries between them, which I think is one of the reasons they won't work in this world. But no one's got the full answer yet.